What is going on, you guys? Today, I'm going to be talking about the best unks in the UFC. Now, I thought I'd make this video in honor of Kamaru Usman's win over Joaquin Buckley last weekend, actually. And, Volkanovski's win over Diego Lopez, getting the belt back at 36 years old, coming off of 2 KO losses. So, to get right into it, we've got Henry Cejudo. Now, Henry Cejudo is 38 years old. He had his UFC debut in 2014, and he's still the number 10 bantamweight in the world, and he was a former 125 and 135 pound champ. Now, Henry Cejudo, I feel like he's not gonna really lose to anybody below him in the rankings, and he's had an amazing career so far. So I figured I had to put him on the list. You know, his fight with Song Yadong was, it was going pretty well. Like he was doing good. He was losing, but he was doing good against Song Yadong, who is a killer. He got dominated by Marab, but he had a moment in the first round where he had Marab hurt pretty bad. His fight with Aljo was very close. So even after that long layoff, he was able to come back and put on some decent performances. And I just think that's very impressive, especially at his age. And he's just been in the UFC for such a long time. So I figured I had to put him on the list. But moving on, we've got obviously Alexander Volkanovski. He had his UFC debut in 2016. He's 36 years old, and he is the featherweight champion. So, Volkanovski, he's 36. Nobody in the lower weight classes, so 155 and below, has ever won a title fight past the age of 35, or even at the age of 35. They've all been 34 or below. So for Volkanovski to, get knocked out twice in a row, brutal knockouts, especially the Topuria one, and then to come back and fight somebody with the most knockout power in the division and win and get the belt back at his age, it's one of the most impressive things ever. Best comeback in sports. As far as like my sports knowledge goes, I don't watch a lot of sports, but if I had to pick one comeback, it would be Volkanovski's comeback. Um, Seeing him win the belt just fucking warmed my heart, dude. Like this guy, he's like a fucking superhero in MMA. So you got to put Volkanovski on an unk list. You can't. It's not complete without Volkanovski. Now, for this video, I tried to include, only fighters that were 35 and up, but Max Holloway is an exception to that rule because he's been in the UFC for such a long time, and he's only 33, but in fight years, he's more like 87. He was in the UFC 4 years before Volkanovski was. He's still the number 4 lightweight in the world. He's the former 145-pound champ, and, he's the current BMF champ. However much stock you want to put into that is up to you. But, that is a thing on his resume that happened. So, yeah, Max has been in the UFC since I was, let me see, I was born in 2008. So, 9, 10, 11, 12. He's been in the UFC since I was 4. And I'm about to turn 17. So, yeah, he's still, winning fights. He lost to Topuria, but before that, he beat Justin Gaethje, knocked him out brutally, completely dominated him in that fight. Before that, he beat the Korean Zombie. Not that great of a win at that point in Zombie's career, but still, he knocked him out. And then before that, he beat Arnold Allen. And then, he obviously lost 3 fights to Volkanovski. But Volkanovski and Ilya are really the only guys who could beat him in his prime so far. And he's not going to be in his prime much longer. So Max Holloway has had one of the greatest, peaks in MMA history. He's consistently fun to watch every fight. How can you not love Max Holloway? And I feel like it's just right to put him on this, unk list because he's been in the UFC for so fucking long, dude. And he's been putting on bangers for that whole time. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. And if he gets a win versus Dustin Poirier, then that just solidifies it more. So, yeah, had to put Max Holloway on the list. Moving up, we've got Charles Oliveira. Now, you know, I had to put Charles on here. He's been in the UFC since 2010. That is 15 years, guys. He's been in the UFC for 15 years. That is damn near half the lifespan of the company. So, he's 35, so he fits the criteria. He's the number 2 lightweight in the world, about to fight for the title again. He's a former champion. Um, and, early on in his career, things were rocky, but, you could see the potential. And he was fighting people like, Jim Miller. I'm pretty sure he fought Frankie Edgar early on in his career. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm pretty sure that Charles Oliveira fought Frankie Edgar. Yeah, within 4 fights of his UFC career, he fought Frankie Edgar, Cowboy Cerrone. Yeah, so Frankie Edgar, Cowboy Cerrone, Jim Miller, and Cub Swanson within the first 9 fights of his career, which happened over the course of like 4 years, I think. So early on, he was fighting killers like that. That's why he has so many losses. But at a certain point in his career, he just fucking locked in, and he became one of the most beloved fighters of all time. So it's only right that Charles Oliveira is on the list. Yeah, had to put him on. But moving on, this one is a little bit of a sleeper pick. I feel like most people who would make a video like this wouldn't put remember the name on here. But, I've got to have Bilal on here. He made his UFC debut in 2016. So, not that long ago compared to some of the other people on this list, but still a pretty long time ago. He's 36, going on 37, and he's still the number 1 welterweight in the world, and he's the former 170 champion. Just you don't see many people 170 and below performing at such a high level once they reach this age. And Bilal is still, like a top 5 contender, and I think he'll be there for a good while. Even if he loses his next fight, I don't see many people below him beating him. Against Jack, he did get pieced up, but he still had moments in the fight where he was doing his thing. He's just an incredibly hard matchup because he's got crazy durability, he's got crazy cardio, and he's a very intelligent fighter. So I had to put Bilal on here. But the next person on the list, the inspiration for this video, we've got Kamaru Usman. Now, Usman has been in the UFC since 2015, so that's a solid 10 years. He's 38. 38. He was coming off a 3-fight loss streak, fighting Joaquin Buckley, who was on a 6-fight win streak. He's the number 5 welterweight in the world, former 170 champion, second greatest welterweight of all time, probably within my top 15 fighters ever. He's got to be on this list, dude. Like I said before, for all these guys, it is not common that you see somebody so old still competing with the elite of the elite at this age. And he's fucking crafty, dude. As Lucas Tracy says, Kamaru Usman is a crafty vet. He put on a wrestling clinic versus Joaquin Buckley for the first 4 rounds, and he's back, dude. I thought at this point he would crack, he would lose, but we're not there yet. So we'll see what happens from here. But Kamaru Usman has, cemented his place on my unk list forever. So, yeah, gotta have him on here. But next fighter on the list, this is another obvious one. Jared Cannonier. He made his UFC debut 10 years ago in 2015. He's 41. 41 years old. And he's the number 7 middleweight in the world. He came off 2 tough losses in a row and then beat the brakes off of RoboCop. He was a huge underdog in that fight. So I love to see Jared Cannonier still doing his thing at this age, 10 years into his UFC career. He's fighting MVP next, and I think he's going to win that matchup because, for being real, once he gets a takedown, I feel like it's going to be over. He's just going to be too big and too strong for MVP. Now, he's a lot slower, so it's going to be tough to get that takedown, but I think he'll be able to get it. and rain down some fucking hellish ground and pound on MVP. But who knows? That is a tough matchup for him. I feel like MVP gives a lot of people problems at middleweight, and that's why he decided to stay at that weight class. But Jared Cannonier has to be on this list. 41 years old. I think he's the oldest person in this video. Yeah, oldest person in the video. Still doing his thing. Number 7. And he's only lost to the best of the best in the division. He has not lost to any, like subpar fighters recently. And he's just got a great resume for middleweight. He's not in the GOAT conversation for that division at all. He's never been a champion. But in terms of like gatekeepers and just outside the top 3 guys, he's fucking up there, dude. And I'm a massive Jared Cannonier fan, so had to include him. But on to the next one. This is another one that's kind of an exception to the rule. You guys can probably guess who it is. Robert Whittaker. I know he's only 34, but he's been in the UFC since 2012. That's a long fucking time, and he's still number 5 in the world. Obviously, he's a former champion. One of the most beloved middleweights on the roster. Just one of the most beloved fighters in general. And he's been in the UFC for such a long time, and he's still doing his thing. I think he's going to beat Reiner de Ritter. I know he's coming off a loss to Hamzat Chimaev, and before that he beat Ikram, fucking smoked him, showed levels in that fight. He beat Paulo, had one rocky moment where he got wobbled in that fight by a spinning wheel kick, but other than that, it was a pretty big domination. He beat the crap out of Paulo. And before that, he lost to DDP. But before that, he was on a win streak. I thought he should have won his second fight against Adesanya. Robert Whittaker is just a legend. One of the most memorable middleweights. I will never forget about Robert Whittaker's career. And he's a legend. He's been in the UFC for such a long time. So I feel like even though he's not 34, in fighting years, this guy's like 85, dude. So he's got to be on the UNC list. And yeah. That's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Does Whittaker deserve to be on this list? I think he does. And let me know what you think about his upcoming main event versus Reiner de Ritter. I think he's going to win that one. And if he wins that one, that will be a huge fucking win for his career, because he's about to turn 35, I think, pretty soon here. But on to the next one. Jan Blachowicz. Oh, Jan is the oldest fighter on this list, actually, not Jared. Small mistake there. Yeah. Jan made his UFC debut in 2014. He's 42 years old. He's the number 5 light heavyweight, former champion. In his last couple fights, he's lost to Carlos Ulberg. Should have won that fight pretty clearly, in my opinion. I thought he clearly won that. He was landing the better shots all throughout the fight. His fight with Alex Pereira, that was a draw. He could have won that fight. I'm not mad if you score it for Pereira, obviously, because he won. But I kind of thought Jan won that fight. And same with the Magomed Ankalaev fight. I thought he should have won that fight. So those are 3 fights that, in a different universe, could be wins. So that's big. Obviously, he lost to Glover Teixeira. But, he beat Adesanya. He beat Dominic Reyes. He's just been consistent in the light heavyweight division for so long, and he's an old fucking man. In his Carlos Ulberg fight before that, I think he had double shoulder surgeries and something like 4 surgeries in total. He's been dealing with injuries for such a long time, and he's still got it. Like, he looks pretty slow in all of his fights, and he obviously didn't look the greatest versus Ulberg, but he still looked good. Like, he still got it. And I don't see him losing to many people below him at all. I think Azamat is a guy who could beat him. But there's not a lot of people who are going to beat Jan Blachowicz, even though he's a crippled old man. So that in itself warrants a placement on this list. But on to the last fighter. We've got Alex Pereira. Now, I know his UFC career has not been nearly as long as the others in this list, but out of everybody on this list, besides Volkanovski, I would argue that he's accomplished the most in the shortest amount of time, and he's getting up there in age. In July, he will turn 38 years old. So that's pretty damn old. He's the same age as John Jones. Um, he made his debut in 2021, so not that long ago, but he became a double champ in that time. He's beaten Sean Strickland, Izzy, Yuri Prohaska, Jamal Hill, Jan Blachowicz. So that's 5 former champs. I don't think I'm missing anybody in that former champ lineup, but he's beat Khalil Roundtree too. And he's just had such an insane career. Instant fan favorite when he joined the UFC. Um, and he's just had some unforgettable moments. And, with him being so old, I felt like it would be fitting to have him on this list because even though it's 205 and it's one of the divisions where, older fighters can still compete a little bit, um, he's just like, he's kind of like, champion B of the division. Ankalaev is A, but there's a slight gap between them, and then there's a massive gap between Alex and everybody else in the division. And I think it's gonna stay that way for a while until he retires. And he's just a legend. So gotta put him in the Unk video. But let me know, who would you guys add to the list? And I hope you enjoyed. And goodbye.